And those sort of observations are critical to me. I see I'm grateful because you've come together as a group. Royal tensions erupted yesterday after a shocking standoff inside Buckingham Palace, where several staff members reportedly refused to bow to Princess Kate, and Princess Anne wasted no time responding. Within hours, those involved were abruptly dismissed, sending shock waves through the royal household. Insiders say the incident exposed a deep divide over loyalty, respect, and the shifting power dynamics of the modern monarchy. But what pushed Princess Anne to take such a swift, unforgiving action? Stay tuned, because this bold move may change everything starting today for the entire royal family. Music, the bow that shook the palace. Whispers now drift through every quiet hallway of Buckingham Palace, telling the same unbelievable story. It began with a single breathtaking moment. A senior aide met Princess Catherine's eyes and simply did not bow. What should have been an ordinary morning instantly shifted into something far sharper. And within the hour, word had reached Princess Anne, who reacted with a force that stunned even those used to royal firmness. The day had started innocently enough in the East Wing, where Catherine was expected to welcome a group of regional trustees. Staff had taken their places, protocol reminders had been reviewed, and everything moved with the predictable rhythm of palace life. But then came that strange frozen second, a pause that felt too intentional, a look held too boldly, a stillness that bent the air. A long-serving attendant, someone trusted and experienced, broke a tradition older than any living royal. They lifted their head but never lowered it. No bow, no gesture of respect. And it happened before Catherine, the woman many quietly describe as the steady future of the monarchy itself. No one gasped, but everyone felt something shift beneath the surface. Courtiers traded silent looks, unsure if they'd just witnessed a simple mistake or a deliberate act of defiance. Catherine, according to those present, didn't flinch. Her posture remained calm, steady, and unmoved. That quiet composure carried more weight than any reprimand, yet that calmness traveled like a storm front through the palace until it reached Anne. And Anne didn't hesitate. She acted swiftly and without ceremony. The aide's access was revoked, their name erased from schedules, and a quiet warning was passed through the corridors. Certain lines were not meant to be crossed. This moment wasn't about politeness. It was about loyalty. Rumor claims Anne spoke only one chilling line as she dismissed the aide. "You bow to the future." That sentence alone made it clear this wasn't personal. It was strategic, but who empowered Anne to act with such speed? Some whisper King Charles had already voiced concerns about rising tensions. Others believe Anne's instincts alone drove the moment. Was this a simple breach of etiquette, or the first sign of a deeper power struggle inside the palace? The spark of power, it began like a single spark falling onto a long dormant pile of resentment. Resentment quietly built over generations under the relentless weight of palace life. That spark ignited quickly, sending invisible flames through corridors no one wanted to acknowledge. Long before cameras adored Catherine, long before the public crowned her their favorite royal, Princess Anne had already studied her closely. In that private moment, Anne made a vow. She would not let the palace consume another woman the way it had once nearly consumed her. As Catherine's star rose, so did the whispers. Admirers or skeptics, everyone watched closely. Was she admired or quietly feared? When Catherine first entered royal life, she seemed calm, composed, and gentle, the very image of grace. But Anne saw what lay beneath the surface. She recognized a strength she herself knew well. Quiet, unshakable, the kind that the monarchy demanded, but rarely rewarded. In public, their interactions were brief, polite smiles and nods. Behind closed doors, Anne observed. She noted how Catherine navigated media storms without faltering, bore her responsibilities without complaint, and most strikingly remained silent in moments when words might have been expected. Not timid silence, but strategic silence. A shield and a tool, Anne understood immediately that Catherine's discipline was more than behavior. It was power in motion, and once the monarchy's tireless workhorse recognized the heavy toll of loyalty. She had paid it herself silently for years. She feared the same path forming around Catherine, delicate threads tightening invisibly. Charles in private told Anne that Catherine reminded him of their mother, not in charm, but in calculation. It wasn't a criticism, but a signal Catherine was becoming more than a spouse. Through grace, strategy, and patience, she was shaping herself into someone capable of real influence. Anne said nothing aloud, but inside her vow hardened. She would not allow another woman to be molded for sacrifice under the guise of honor. Anne stayed in the shadows, reinforcing the monarchy's oldest rules, feeling the foundations tremble. Catherine's rise unsettled more than Anne. Courtiers whispered that her perfection was too deliberate, her elegance too precise. Was she merely fitting in or quietly preparing to redefine the monarchy itself? Was Catherine destined to lead, or was she quietly reshaping the crown before anyone realized? The palace splits as Catherine's rise exposes old wounds. What started as admiration slowly shifted into unease. The older staff, the ones who still spoke Diana's name with a mix of reverence and warning, felt something changing around Catherine. She wasn't loud, she wasn't rebellious, she didn't challenge rules. What unsettled them was far quieter. Catherine wasn't chasing authority, she was easing into it, as though the crown was drifting toward her on its own. And for those who believed royal power should only move when formally granted, that silent shift was deeply unsettling. Anne felt the pressure tightening around her. She had tried to remain on the edges, observing without stepping in, but neutrality no longer felt like a real option. She recognized the look in Catherine's eyes, the calm of someone carrying a heavy load because they have no choice. Anne understood that weight. She had carried it herself. And as she watched Catherine navigate growing expectations, she also saw the same old knives that once aimed at her now turning toward Catherine. That was when Anne decided she would no longer stand aside. Inside the palace walls, two hidden camps began forming. Some believed Catherine was the key to protecting the monarchy's future, a figure who could modernize without destroying its roots. Others resented her entirely, claiming she disrupted the old balance simply by existing. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was an invisible battle fought through measured smiles, perfect posture, and carefully chosen words. For years, tension simmered beneath polished surfaces and polite traditions, but Catherine's rise, quiet, steady, unstoppable, ripped that facade apart. Behind sealed doors, a silent war now unfolded between two visions of the crown, one embracing change, the other resisting it fiercely. Staff members began taking sides. Whispers moved faster than schedules. Talk of ignored vows, clipped greetings, and protocol breaches that were suddenly treated like crimes. Camilla's circle didn't stay idle. Her seasoned allies tightened boundaries, trying to confine Catherine to ceremonial spaces. But Catherine, though outwardly compliant, was far from alone. She had formed her own loyal team, young, strategic, and growing stronger by the week. Her influence wasn't just expanding, it was accelerating. Which vision of the crown will ultimately prevail as the quiet battle for the monarchy's future intensifies behind closed doors. Anne draws the line as palace loyalties fracture. At first, Anne kept her distance, steady, composed, the quiet guardian of tradition and the subtle link between the monarchy's past and the uncertain future forming around them, as if it were just another chapter in the crown's long, complicated history. But even she couldn't ignore what the internal memos revealed. Some were official, others were whispered about. A few mysteriously appeared on the wrong desks, and all of them sorted staff into secret loyalty groups. Were you aligned with Camilla's seasoned circle, a Windsor traditionalist clinging to the old ways, or a Middleton quiet? Someone who supported Catherine without daring to say it openly. Careers, privileges, invitations, and futures suddenly depended on the invisible label placed beside your name. The public never learned of these lists, but they didn't have to fear travels faster than any headline. And as that fear spread through the palace corridors, Anne knew her neutral stance could not survive much longer. The breaking point came when a protocol officer mistakenly forwarded a confidential message chain. Within it, senior members of staff questioned whether Catherine had even earned the right to be bowed to. That wasn't just disrespect. It was dangerous. The monarchy lives through symbols, gestures, small rituals, the constant reinforcement of order. When those symbols fracture, the institution begins to tremble. What began as quiet resistance now looked like the start of internal collapse. Yet through all the chaos, slight role reversal, Djukovic was the slight favorite. Catherine stayed unshaken. She knew the tension, she felt the shifting alliances, but she revealed nothing. Her choice wasn't to argue. It was to endure, and that frightened the old guard more than anger ever could. They knew how to confront scandals and disobedience. But Catherine's stillness, that was a battlefield they couldn't navigate. As factions hardened behind polished doors, Anne understood someone had to restore structure. She stepped forward without hesitation. Multiple insiders described the moment the palace seemed to vibrate with Anne's fury. She didn't simply remove the disloyal staffer. She delivered a reckoning, no announcement, no warning. She marched into the East Wing briefing room, shut the door, and locked it. After Anne's explosive intervention, has order truly been restored, or has she revealed just how fragile the monarchy's unity has become? Anne's unyielding command. There was no preamble, no polite introduction, no room for negotiation. Anne's voice cut through the room like steel, cold, precise, and unavoidable. Her words struck with a force that silenced every breath. There is no monarchy without order, and there will be no disorder in my presence. The impact was immediate. Staff froze mid-step. Some kept their eyes fixed on the floor, trembling. One aide fled in tears. Another slammed the door behind them when dismissed. There were no warnings, no second chances, no attempt to soften the blow. Disloyalty in any form would no longer be tolerated, regardless of rank, tenure, or connections. While her words were aimed at staff, the room sensed a broader message, a signal to the royals who had allowed cracks in the palace's hierarchy to fester and grow unnoticed. Catherine was notably absent. She had been informed of the meeting, but advised not to attend. Some say Anne sought to shield her from the storm, sparing her from the raw display of authority. Others suggest it was a calculated strategy, allowing Catherine's influence to expand quietly while Anne absorbed the backlash. Either way, Catherine's absence didn't weaken the moment, it intensified it. This wasn't Catherine commanding loyalty. It was Anne asserting it on her behalf, and that distinction shifted the atmosphere entirely. When Queen Camilla was briefed afterward, she offered no comment, public or private. Her silence, so unusual for someone known for careful political maneuvering, fueled speculation. Some believed she was caught off guard, quietly observing the storm as it unfolded. Others suspected she approved of Anne's decisive tightening of palace discipline amid the polished protocol and hushed whispers. One truth was clear: Anne had acted decisively, enforcing order, demanding loyalty, and reminding everyone that no one, no matter their rank, was untouchable. Had Anne acted to safeguard the crown or to ensure it remained firmly under her control? The hidden document that shifted palace power. This wasn't merely about a single bow. It was about something far deeper, one that suggested Catherine's role was evolving into something far greater than a ceremonial figurehead. If the whispers were true, palace insiders call it the Protocol Revision Paper. A slim dossier never released publicly, but murmured about in corridors where loyalty and influence are measured in subtle gestures. On the surface, it seemed harmless: minor updates to ceremonial procedures, seating arrangements for state events, and delegation outlines. But buried in its careful language was a seismic shift, a restructuring of council hierarchy that placed Catherine not just beside the king, but in some readings above Camilla and even William. Wording was deliberately subtle, almost cryptic, yet to those fluent in the palace's unspoken codes, the meaning was clear. Catherine was being positioned as a shadow sovereign, a quiet but central force in the monarchy's next chapter. Her authority would be graceful, unobtrusive, and absolute. The timing of the document's circulation was no accident. Allegedly initialed by Charles, but unsigned by Camilla, it reached key aides only days before the bowing incident. Anne, it seems, was among the few who glimpsed it in its raw form, early enough to comprehend its implications, but close enough to know swift action was necessary. Haven't seen hiding a hair of them at that suggestion. The staffers' refusal to bow was no isolated act of defiance. It was a crack in a system already under tension. Anne's response, though furious, was carefully timed. A decisive reaction was essential. Hesitation would signal weakness, uncertainty, or even a challenge to Catherine's emerging position. The revelations stirred more than loyalty. They sparked fear. Catherine's rise was not just visible. It was structural. Her elegance, once purely ceremonial, now carried weight in palace politics. Traditionalists, still recovering from past upheavals, found themselves unnerved. Public admiration for Catherine, previously a tool, now felt threatening. She was no longer being shaped by the institution. She was quietly shaping it herself. Some insiders speculate that Charles intended the document as a controlled evolution of the crown, a way to modernize power without triggering a full-blown upheaval. Was this secret document a blueprint for a new monarchy, or the spark that would ignite a palace storm no one could contain? The silent warning behind palace loyalties. Some insiders believe the push came not from the palace itself, but from Catherine's inner circle. Modern strategists with no royal lineage, yet razor-sharp instinct. They are said to have drafted the language of the secret document and quietly circulated it, positioning Catherine not merely as a supportive royal, but as a sovereign in waiting. And that perspective casts Anne's fierce reaction to a missed bow in an entirely new light. It wasn't just about etiquette. It was about reinforcing structure. Catherine's authority was no longer symbolic. It was moving, tangible, and undeniable. Those who refused to bow weren't merely disrespectful. They had become defiant players in a palace, shifting beneath their feet. The staffer at the center of the storm vanished almost immediately. leaving behind only a cryptic final statement to a close confidant. "I was warned not to kneel. It wasn't boastful or rebellious. It was quiet, fearful, and tinged with inevitability. In a palace where obedience is embedded into every gesture, every glance, and every carefully chosen word, being warned against showing respect to the future queen is far more than a minor act of disobedience. It hints at internal manipulation and perhaps even sabotage." Rumors quickly pointed to Camilla's allies, veteran staff fiercely protective of the queen's position, who may have subtly pressured certain employees to withhold gestures of deference from Catherine, preserving their version of hierarchy. What made this incident even more shocking was the staffer's spotless record, years of flawless service, public praise for discretion, and dedication during the late queen's final months made her sudden fall and disappearance all the more unsettling. Within days, her name was removed from the staff directory. Her email returned automated replies, and her residence, reportedly still under royal tenancy, was vacated overnight. No statement, no farewell, only a quiet eraser. In that vacuum, speculation erupted. Online forums and whispered conversations transformed her into something larger than herself. Not a disloyal aide, but a potential whistleblower. Someone who had seen the palace's hidden fractures, tried to signal the danger, and was silenced before her warning could take root. Was this staffer's disappearance a warning to all, or a sign that palace loyalty is now measured by fear rather than duty? Camilla's calculated silence and the palace chessboard. Speculation ran wild after the staffer vanished. Anonymous posts claimed she had fled the country. Others suggested she had been quietly relocated under royal protection. Some even whispered that she'd been threatened into submission. No one knows the truth, and that uncertainty only fueled the press fire. When approached, the royal office refused to comment, never denying, never confirming. That wall of silence was read by many as proof that something serious had gone awry behind Palace Gate. Amid the unanswered questions, Catherine's name kept rising to the center, not as a cause of the chaos, but as the axis around which it now spun. The lingering silence only deepened a chilling theory. The crown isn't just shielding Catherine, it's preparing her for something far bigger. Thank you all so much. Thank you very much. God bless you. Queen Camilla, when asked to speak, reportedly smiled without a word. In the days after Anne's explosive crackdown, she seemed to vanish entirely. No public appearances, no quiet palace presences, nothing. Yet her absence only heightened scrutiny. Some assumed she was wounded, stung by Anne's raw defense of Catherine. Others suspected she was strategically silent, observing, waiting. Those who had watched Camilla for years knew better. She doesn't retreat, and she recalibrates. In the absence of noise, power rearranges itself. Leaked accounts suggest Camilla privately advised against reacting. Let Anne handle it. Let the consequences fall on her shoulders, she reportedly told her inner circle. It wasn't surrender. It was calculated distance. She could watch, assess, and remain untouched while chaos swirled around her. Blame in the palace rarely lands randomly. Camilla ensured it would not land on her. The tension between Anne and Camilla stretches back decades. Two women hardened by duty and loss, each defending her own path. Anne's public defense of Catherine, carried out without Camilla's input, was as much a statement of loyalty as it was a challenge to the Queen's relevance. Camilla, however, let it burn. Courtiers were even seen celebrating after the staff dismissal. Whether in relief, sarcasm, or strategy, no one knows. Some speculate I've been actually trying to keep quiet about reaching 3/4 of the century." Camilla predicted Anne's move, letting the storm unfold without interference. And if that's true, Catherine's rise may not be untouchable. Camilla does not strike while her opponents are growing. She waits until they are surrounded by their own power, distracted, confident, exposed. Is Camilla silently steering the palace or waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim control from those who think they are in charge? Catherine's silent ascendancy, and in that moment she moved. While Camilla receded from the spotlight, another woman stepped fully into it. Every step Catherine took was watched by eyes that had once plotted Anne's downfall. She spoke no words. Yet yesterday, Catherine walked through the palace halls with her chin held high, and every aide, footman, and advisor bowed. No press release, no statement, just quiet authority. In a world where silence is strategy, Catherine had altered the balance entirely. The days following the staffer's dismissal were tense, filled with speculation and subtle realignment. While whispers floated and staff scrambled, Catherine remained composed. She didn't grant interviews, release rebuttals, or maneuver behind the scenes. She didn't need to. The power she now carried didn't demand acknowledgement. It simply existed, and in its presence, resistance began to crumble. Those who had hesitated in showing deference moved swiftly to correct course. Corridors that had once carried uncertain glances now radiated certainty. Every gesture slightly longer, every bow slightly deeper. Her first public appearance after the incident conveyed the message without a single word. Catherine arrived poised, composed, standing taller, not physically, but in presence and influence behind her. The narrative had shifted. It was no longer about defending her position. It was about acceptance. She had already won. Senior advisors, once loyal to multiple factions, quietly leaned in her direction. Meetings once funneled through layers of hierarchy now reached her directly. Directives requiring the king's approval were reportedly pre-approved by Catherine privately. The restructuring wasn't announced. It simply happened, and no one challenged it. The public noticed immediately. Social media erupted with hashtags, Queen in Waiting, The Future is Catherine, Bow to her. Photos of her walking into the palace, expression unreadable, went viral. Commentators observed the irony. Catherine didn't break her silence. She expanded it, turning quiet into power. Even skeptics admitted the authority she wielded was earned, undeniable, and absolute. They always ask unusual questions often. Yet, behind her calm ascendancy, murmurs continued. Some speculated that King Charles himself had quietly authorized her growing influence, passing responsibility to her to stabilize the monarchy's future. If true, it explained the sudden, unquestioned shift in senior staff behavior. Has Catherine's silent rise cemented her power? Or is this only the beginning of a carefully orchestrated plan? Anne's warning shot and the hidden battle for succession. The staff, after witnessing Anne's fierce defense of Catherine, made their choice for themselves. When tradition fails to define authority, perception fills the gap, and perception now clearly favors Catherine. Yet, beneath the visible shift in loyalty and influence, one truth remained buried. This was not the end of a conflict. It was only the result of a single battle. Anne's intervention hadn't been reactive. It was deliberate, a warning shot, coated in fury and steeped in centuries of royal tradition. Something far larger had been set in motion. Catherine now commanded the room, yet the real shock still lingered backstage. Anne's decision wasn't about the present moment. It was about what was coming next. What seemed like a story about a beau was in truth a story about succession. Sources suggest that behind the dismissal lies a new harsh reality, a royal ultimatum that reaches beyond staff to Camilla, Charles, and even William. A confidential document reportedly circulated quietly within palace walls. It made no public mention of the scandal, but carried the weight of transformation. Insiders claim it didn't propose ideas, it dictated outcomes. It outlined a shift not of titles, but of control. Catherine was not named queen, not yet, but she was designated in bold, deliberate phrasing as the future sovereign guide, a compass for the crown, a force in charge rather than an accessory. Every senior royal advisor's signature appears beside it, except for two Charles. Hesitant Camilla, absent entirely. Princess Anne, long silent, has now assumed a new role. No longer merely the guardian of tradition, she has become the executor of inevitability. Insiders say her defense of Catherine was not simply a reaction to a protocol breach. It was the first move of a varied plan designed to anchor the monarchy's future in the face of uncertainty. Charles may respect her judgment, but he resents her speed. He fears the storm surrounding Catherine might engulf William. Anne has no such hesitation. She knows delay invites chaos, and after decades of quiet, she moves decisively. Camilla, once the ultimate figure of influence, now watches from the sidelines. Is in shaping the future of the crown or orchestrating a power play that could change the monarchy forever. Catherine becomes the axis of palace power. The monarchy was no longer defined solely by decrees or ceremonial pageantry. Power now resided in perception, in subtle gestures, in the acknowledgement of authority by those who had once held influence. Unquestioned meetings that had previously followed rigid hierarchies now flowed differently, quietly redirected through channels that allowed Catherine's touch to be felt, even indirectly. Her influence manifested in every pre-approved directive, every carefully written report. King Charles remained present but measured. "To see, lovely to meet you. Yeah, it's very nice to see you." Aware of the subtle shift, yet refraining from public intervention, Anne and Catherine navigated this transition with precision, leaving whispers circulating about the council's quiet alignment. Staff noted who supported the modernist strategy, who hesitated, and who subtly reinforced Catherine's growing authority. Every nod, pause, and bow carried consequence. Those who had once questioned protocol now approached her with calculated respect, uncertain if they were following rules or simply acknowledging a new center of power. The palace corridors vibrated with tension, an unspoken understanding that tradition alone could no longer dictate behavior. Catherine's composure remained flawless. Her calm presence acted as both shield and weapon. A single smile or measured glance guided the aide's actions, amplifying her influence without words. "Can you explain what we see?" Observing from the sidelines, Anne understood that this transformation was now self-sustaining. Camilla's strategic withdrawal became clear. By stepping back, she avoided conflict while preserving her own position as the palace adapted to Catherine's authority. The first public confirmation of this shift came during a high-level meeting in the main drawing room. As King Charles entered, every staff member instinctively turned toward Catherine, a synchronized, unspoken acknowledgement of her influence. The king paused, said nothing, and in that silence the gesture was amplified. It was no longer about personal loyalty, protocol, or preference. It was structural, symbolic, and irreversible in perception. Decisions, approvals, and ceremonial gestures now flowed through Catherine's orbit, not by decree, but because the palace itself had realigned. Her rise was silent, patient, and absolute, a quiet transformation rooted in perception, obedience, and inevitability. Power had shifted, but who would dare challenge Catherine, and when remained the shadow over every royal corridor? So, what do you think? Has the monarchy quietly revealed its next true queen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.